My name is Joshua Igara. Your Excellency, we want to have honest discussions with yourself about two issues that we are very passionate about. Paraphrasing President Paul Kagame, Africa must be built by Africans. Ideally, we cannot sit and wait for other people to come from outside and change the destiny of our continent. So a little bit we'll be touching more about how do we build a Pan-Africa vision to build inclusive prosperity for our people across all our people, as a sub-region in ESC and also in Africa too. And in the next hour or so, we'll have some questions which I already received earlier, and we will take some questions, Your Excellencies, from the crowd, from the team here today. And we'd like to discuss 6 main business issues, Your Excellencies. First issue is on African competitiveness. We talked about manufacturing, we talked about different sectors. And in a way, to build the continent, we need to be globally competitive in our market. It does touch about our energy requirements, easy of movement of our people today from Rwanda, in Kenya, in the 5 countries. Hasn't always been easy. Whereas we talk about resources outside or below the ground, mineral resources, Your Excellencies, I believe that resources walking above the ground, our talent and skills, is what will catapult our markets to be exceeding globally competitive. And so we need to focus about movement, about resources in Africa, in our markets. I'm very proud of your real outliers today and speaking here about Rwanda. ICT invention, big drive for the 4G or the LTE in terms of the network we're running today. In fact, Rwanda is among the few African countries already in this kind of framework. We'd like to see more businesses, more countries running in these routes. Infrastructure, I'll come back again on energy. I will talk about insecurity or security, and lastly, Your Excellency, we'll talk about health, a little bit more specific on the Ebola challenge and how we are prepared. So I will go straight. I have a question which I would like to address specific to President Uhuru Kenyatta. Mr. President, Africa is spoken today as the emerging market. It is spoken about, with digital era today. We talk about the future, we talk about the youth dividends, we talk about democracy, and this tremendous growth, Your Excellency, over the last few years. GDP has been good, expanding 5 to 9%. But if you look at the majority of our people, Your Excellency, across villages in East Africa, poverty still remains a challenge for themselves. And therefore, when we ask the question about inclusive growth, talk about joint prosperity for our people, is it possible, Uhuru Kenyatta, that our people can share in the next, by 2020 and beyond, the kind of frameworks or the kind of diversifying our economy for them to feel the real economic growth?
Thank you. I think first I'd just like to begin by thanking our host for inviting us to this forum. I think and I believe and I agree with your statement that this forms the basis of our own very clear understanding that Africa will not be able to achieve her social, economic objectives unless it is going to be a process driven by Africans. I personally am very clear on the fact that I do not believe that Kenya or Kenyans can succeed unless the region in total succeeds. So we must partner, we must work together, and I think forums like this provide us with that essential basis. Going back to your question directly, the fact of the matter is that we have a large population and a very young population. Development and growth, indeed, as has been stated by all speakers, has, however, been skewed, and the majority have felt as if they have been left outside of the framework of growth. They have not felt the true effects of that growth. And I think that is partially equally responsible for a lot of the social upheaval that we have had on the African continent. And I believe strongly that this again has been driven by the fact that we have been economies that have not focused on our real wealth. We have focused ourselves largely as producers of raw materials to support industry, manufacturing outside of the African continent. We have basically been exporting jobs while exporting our raw materials. But the truth of the matter is that our wealth lies in developing our real wealth. And our real wealth is our population, is our people. And that is why we, as a government, have come up and very clearly identified the need to bring our young people back on board and to be able to create an enabling environment for them to venture, participate in the real economy. We have various programs that we have initiated, from the WEZO funds, from the youth development, from women empowerment, public procurement, 30%, reserved for this sector of our society, because this is really, where our future depends. But governments alone can equally not succeed unless private sector also takes an active role and a participation. We need to be able to create the environment. We need to be able to create or to push resources towards developing this sector of our society. But private sector also needs to open its own doors and to recognize that they need to equally, be partners with various. We need to be able to integrate. You need to be able to nurture and to grow these industries without that idea that they are in competition but rather complementary, because we can't continue, on that basis that Nairobi, or I don't want to mention any companies because I don't want to, but we want to be able to know that you can nurture and grow small business in the informal sector without them necessarily being looked at as competition, but rather complementing, right? How can we integrate big business and small business, right? How can we create more channels whereby a lot of your various components or products that you require for your own manufacture, you get from these small businesses, largely in the informal sector. We were looking, for example, at the health sector. When we look at the challenge, for example, of providing hospital beds, we are still importing hospital beds, for example. And yet we have a huge capacity to develop our skills in our Juakali centers and actually pass that business on and create new businesses that supplement these hospitals. Why are we buying knockdown kits from China? And yet we have in Nairobi a whole street there in Dagoretti where you have young people trying to eke out a living. And this is why we're saying we as government will play our part. We want them to supply us with furniture and other issues. But private sector should also recognize that you can equally, you don't have to import from China. You don't have to, you can also equally buy from the same. And as then Linus says, that therefore means that as you pass Dagoretti corner, you don't have to be worried about whether your door is locked, because those young men are busy working to provide you with the furniture that you need at your home, and everybody is sleeping. So this is really the strong belief that some of us have. We want to partner with the private sector. We want the private sector to be able to understand that they need to integrate, they need to help us nurture these small industries, largely in the informal sector, mainstream them. And I think, as I've said in the past, even when we look at our tax regimes, if we start bringing this informal sector, largely composed of our youth, into the mainstream, we're also widening our tax base and reducing the burden that large businesses feel they are carrying on behalf of the country. But governments require revenue, rather than that revenue coming from a small percentage of taxpayers. Let's work together, let's incorporate these people, let's widen our tax base. As we widen our tax base, we reduce and make our tax regimes that much more competitive without putting the burden on a few. I think just in terms of opening, that's what I have to say.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Perhaps I will turn the same question a little bit with a different kind of tone to President Kagame. He's spoken very solidly about Africans building the continent. Your Excellency, many people from outside say it's African moment. Really, I don't agree. I think Africa has been in the moment for a while. Now, in terms of collaborating and expanding the economy in Rwanda, agriculture and tourism, your experience in the last few years, perhaps you'll share your vision on how to bring in more people into prosperity and inclusiveness. Your President.
Thank you very much, moderator. Let me start by thanking President Uhuru Kenyatta, who is also the chairperson of our East African community, for being here with us, for finding the time to join in this conversation, and also welcome the East African Business Council and to hold their meeting here. So you are most welcome. Of course, as the earlier speaker said, if there was any doubt about the hard issues underlying the conversation we are going to have, I think you can see us without ties. It's because we are preparing for the hard questions, and hopefully you will get the hard answers that befit the question. But really, I think I just continue and follow on with what President Uhuru has just said. We need to grow our economies. We need prosperity. And here we have almost everything. All the building blocks are there, really, if you, from what has been said by many people. All we need to do is to put the blocks in place and move as fast as we can. If you look at the different partner states, they have what to offer, that is in East Africa. But the more we bring the resources together, the more we integrate, the more we work together, I think each partner state of the East African community benefits more than if we worked all on our own. And I like the saying by the Nigerian that Lenas mentioned to us. And it is only a reminder, otherwise these are things we should know. But if you look at in Rwanda's case, we have been building mainly from the bottom. And we have encouraged the connection between the actions, the policies of government with the needs of the majority of our people in terms of improving their lives, but also creating an environment in which they can do what they are able to do and thrive. And really in between, there is the business community. There are businesses and business leaders that must also do what they know. And much as I'm saying in between, there is the whole connection between these three segments, if you will. And we want the ordinary citizen helped by what happens between business and government to be also moving higher so that whatever they do earns them what they deserve to earn to change their lives. And that's why, so for example, if you look back in between 2006 and 2011, where we were able to lift or to have people lift themselves out of poverty, up to 1 million of our citizens were able to do that. And because between business and government, we identified those sectors that include most of our people, and therefore if the policies were conducive, if businesses were facilitated and were carried out in a business-friendly environment and with other aspects of the environment that have to be in place, including security, stability, which you have mentioned, the people will go out there and really play their part, even starting with what they have before they move to other places, and we will see improvement happen. And I think that is in a short time of 5 years. If you have 1 million people telling you their lives have improved, I think. So we have to identify, we have to be specific, but we have to do it in a very inclusive manner. We have to be organized so that everyone is enabled to play their part, to participate in making this difference. And as we do it, say in one country like Rwanda, and Kenya is doing something else that benefits the people of Kenya, and other partner states are doing the same. When we learn from each other, when we look at these best practices and work together, you can imagine then how much there is in terms of benefit for the people of this whole region, close to 140 million people of our East African community. So I think really it's working together, it's learning from each other, it's being able to identify from what we already know, what is it that we can do or support people to do so that everyone benefits. So from individual countries to the whole region, this is the way we should go, and this is what can happen and benefit Africa as a whole. So the saying this is the moment for Africa, it has always been the moment for Africa, really. Only that we have sometimes, as somebody put it, maybe we've been sleeping at times, longer than we should.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Your Excellency. I just want to follow up on a follow-up question to President Uhuru Kenyatta, specifically on the youth and the opportunity to utilize talent and skills. Mr. President, by the year 2020, East Africa today will be perhaps the 7th largest size of population in the world in the next 6-7 years. We have our people moving and very intelligent, young, dynamic, they have the capability. The challenge for industry today is, are they able to move freely within the region, within Africa, within the world, particularly our region first. And the two of you are true outliers in driving that integration between Kenya and Rwanda. But we see challenges. Is it possible that we realize that objective in the short term?
I believe indeed it is possible. And all that it requires is political will. If we look at the broad framework of our community, this is a critical ingredient. But let us be frank, what has made us not move at the pace that we would have wanted to move at? And a lot of that has to do with national fears, a sense of insecurity that if I open up, my people will be denied jobs. Other countries may be, a a step ahead and they will take up all the jobs or they will take up all the opportunities. It is these fears that I think we must begin to deal with. And I think the beginning of dealing with those fears is for us to start saying that let's start talking about our people being the East African people. Let's start saying our people are the East African people. Ourselves and Rwanda especially have made tremendous progress in this. We have been very clear that we need to be able to open up the labor market, to be able to take full advantage of this talent, this huge pool of talent that is available in the East African region. And that just came from a very clear, inspired, and brave approach by President Kagame and President Kibaki, where they took a decision and they said that citizens of Rwanda, citizens of Kenya should be able to move freely between the two countries. And the issue of work permits should not apply. I don't think Rwanda is any worse off from that decision. In fact, I think it is better off. I don't think Kenya is any worse off as a result of that decision. I think we're actually much better placed because we have our young people able to move freely. We have our businesses able to move free. I was told yesterday, for example, a good number of you came through the airport just using your IDs, and this is something that is tremendous. The Minister of Justice, last time I was here, was informing me that he had an advertisement for a position in his ministry, and he advertised across the East African board. And there were Kenyans who applied and other people who applied, because really what you're doing is tapping the best. And once you tap the best, they will help you create additional jobs as opposed to blocking people, not moving, right? And then actually retrogressing, because why would you? I keep looking at let's take the United States for example. What built the United States? The United States is built on the basis of tapping African talent, Indian talent, and talent from all over the world. Yeah? This is what creates a booming and growing economy. We also need to stop that inward-looking mentality that we inherited from our colonial masters and begin to recognize that if we are to take full advantage and develop our economies through our own initiatives, we must allow our people to move across our borders freely. And this is something that I am always encouraging our colleagues, that please, let us not be fearful of one another. Let us demystify this long-bred attitude that I am doing this to protect my people. Your people are the East African people. Open up, allow our people to move freely, and in the long term, the benefit will be the growth of our regional economy.
Thank you very much. It's an excellent answer. Perhaps maybe to look at the Pan-Africa view, President Kagame, you may have some comments in terms of the movement of resources within the continent, because that's a real action for us in this moment.
Sure. It's important that I really compliment my brother President Uhuru on this one. And even from practical experience, in the case of Rwanda, it's not just, say, allowing Kenyans or other East Africans to come and work here. it is all in terms of, it's a question of mentality and the fears some people tend to have, as mentioned by the president. But let me tell you, in my own office, the president's office, I have had Kenyans work for me. I have had the Tanzanians, the East Africans. I have even gone beyond. I have had the British come and work in my office. I've had Americans work for me in my office. Ordinarily, the ordinary politics has it that, these are people who are coming to, how can you have these foreigners in the president's office? Why not? Because in any case, for me, it's what they do, and the rest is about the laws in place. They have to respect the laws that are there. It's institutions, the way they have been built. So, and we have found that we have really filled these gaps that exist because of our low skills base here in Rwanda, which is factual, which has been real because of history. And so we can't just be inward looking and say, well, we will fill these gaps only when our people have been trained, educated to be able to do this. Because then that means you would probably have to wait for another 30, 50 years to fill every gap. But in any case, what is, and that is similar to earlier what was said, if they increase the trade among African countries, you have found that the trade is on the basis of some of the things that actually where value has been added. But with the rest of the world, we send raw materials. We are not able to process and sell and trade in value-added goods. This is as primitive as the same way of looking at the labor market and not allowing the free movement of labor. It's just as primitive and as limiting. We are limiting ourselves when we have huge opportunities and we are not exploiting the opportunities and benefiting as we should just by the blockages in our own thinking and worries that are not really warranted. So we have experimented, and I think people need to have courage to do that. Yes, when we opened our borders, when we did that with Kenya, for example, allowing people to move freely between Kenya and Rwanda and reduced restrictions on work permits and so on and so forth, and visas and so on. Everyone benefited. And this is why I was saying Rwanda, we can tell the story. We have benefited. The worries that people had, of course, some Rwandans had worries, but it is up to leaders to, make decisions, but also involve the people. And because at that time, I remember, some Rwandans used to come and tell us, but you see, these Kenyans, they are more educated, they have skills, they want to come and take our jobs, and, we will be unemployed. And I gave them specific examples. I said, okay, if we actually fill the other gap that exists of the work you can't do, because one doctor serving tens of thousands of people, you simply don't serve them well. So I think we need a conversation even with our own people and show them how these fears are unfounded, but also show them the benefits actually involved in this. And through that, we are able to address these problems. So if Rwanda cannot worry about Kenya, why should other bigger countries worry about Kenya?
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Thank you. I want to turn a little bit the discussion into ICT. I mean, I must say and recognize you are the most digital president today in this century in Africa and the world today. And technology is a good game changer for us. In fact, if I look at Rwanda, leapfrogs our growth for the last decade. Kenya today, you're talking about 4G, WiMAX broadband. Look at the innovation on mobile money, M-Pesa today, telecommunications. That is really going to be a bread, but something to change the way our people, young people, involved with the way the economy can grow. What are your dreams, Your Excellency? Starting from Uhuru Kenyatta, how does ICT change the future of Africa, in your perspective?
I think this is where we have our biggest advantage. I say that because if you look at what has happened, especially over the last 10 years, in terms of using ICT to propel growth, we have a very big advantage. And the big advantage that we have is that if you look at most developed economies, they have, for a very long time, invested in a lot of infrastructure, which ultimately means that they are very resistant to change because they've got all this investment that they've made in the past, which they need to recoup. We, however, are coming from a whole different ballgame. We don't have that infrastructure. So this is a whole new area where we are actually able to look at and to take full advantage of this great new opportunity. And as you've talked about, the growth, for example, in mobile money, all the new various innovations that have come up using technology, creating new businesses and access to various products through the use of technology. This really is the future for Africa. This is the future for our young people. I was telling somebody the other day, you know, we've got all this mobile money going now. We've got others coming with this new SIM card and the competition between my friend Bob Collymore and people saying, no, you know, we've got to. I said, no, let them fight it out. Let them decide it out there, because at the end of the day, all we want is better, cheaper products for our people. We need to look at this not as challenges, but as opportunities. Let us allow this competition to go out there. Yes, we may make some mistakes, but we will learn from those mistakes ultimately, and use this technology to drive our growth and development agenda. My friends here in the media we've been fighting, and I'm telling them, don't let these young people, let's go through to this digital migration. Participate in it. Go out there. Let our young people be able to make their productions and air them and move out there. It's competition is good, is healthy, right? And you can never not be too ready. Yes, you have invested, but these young people, work with them. You know, get their product. You know, don't block them. Don't say we don't want that challenge, or we're not ready for that challenge, because it's the same fear as we're talking about in the labor market. If we continue to have that mentality of saying, oh, we don't want citizens from this country to go to this country because they'll take away, you know, it's the same mentality that we're saying here. You know, we don't want digital migration because digital migration will bring in a whole host of other issues that we're not ready for. Let us compete. Let us take advantage of this technological advancement and opportunity that it creates, and let us harness it, right, and manage it, as opposed to being fearful of it. I think there are great potentials, both for existing businesses and upcoming businesses, if we allow ourselves to open up ourselves to full utilization of what ICT can actually do for our growth and development agenda in the region.
But perhaps we'll also hear some, President Kagame has been a key proponent on ICT for many decades. Your Excellency, perhaps some thoughts around this.
Yes. We have encouraged and invested in different technologies. Technologies generally have a multiplier effect. They have led to reducing costs of doing things. They have added to efficiencies. And as we have seen in our country, that has not only speeded up, but also really made it easy for service delivery, which ultimately is also what, among other priorities, we are looking at. How do you deliver services to the ordinary people? How do you bring the people to understand some of the technologies that have been made simple and user-friendly, and once people are mobilized and educated how to use them, they can benefit, whether in agriculture, in education, in health, in later on in business. So, technologies also form really the bedrock for innovation that works well for entrepreneurship. And so you name whatever field you'll find technology has use and benefit once properly utilized. So it's one thing that, and look, at the beginning, as I remember in 1996 or 7, when we were just recovering from the tragedy we had here, we started talking about investing in technologies. That's how we started investing in mobile technology and other things. And of course, there were arguments. People were saying, no, but how does Rwanda start talking about the use of ICT and different technologies, and when they need, bread and butter and the other things. And for us, the understanding was there was no contradiction. And it wasn't going to be either or, but to find ways of spreading our investments, even in a situation that was so urgent like that, to see how we can speed up things. And of course, here we're operating in a very complicated situation, because at that time in Rwanda, in any case, maybe it also helped us, because we were not able, we did not have the luxury to prioritize and say, we are going to for this first and then for that. Everything at that time was a priority. So when you are managing things like that, everything is a priority, then that's how you start saying, okay, I'll go, this will help this will also lead to the other, so I have to try everything at the same time. And some of the things we are doing as just experiment, and we did not, but we took the courage to do that, and I think the benefit was that we were making some headways and making good progress, so we continued. So investing in the technology first of all, technologies are a business unto themselves. But then when you come to the other part where now once well leveraged, they actually make the businesses, other businesses or other business sectors more vibrant, more efficient, more cost effective, or then the value is even much bigger. So it's not a discovery we have made here in Rwanda. I think it is known everywhere. It's only that we have decided to go ahead and do it.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Your Excellency. In a way, reflecting in my own words, as you say, I think seeing the possibility of multiple futures in business and in government is something, it's a mindset change. And I think at that time, Your Excellencies, we have some questions from the floor, and I would like just to usher in, because it's an engagement and conversations, Dr. Mish, if you could be able to take up some few questions from the floor. So I hand over the mic to yourself, Dr. Mish.
Thank you very much, Joshua. Your Excellencies, I have a question here from Salafina Flavia. I think it goes to Your Excellency, President Kagame. Your Excellency, it's been 7 years since Rwanda joined the EAC. What do you believe is the greatest achievement that you can mention from these 7 years?
Having deeper, broader, more access to the market of East Africa, which has served us much better than operating in a much smaller space. And we hope we have also benefited others. But more importantly, we have all benefited together. And so we have found most of our challenges have been addressed by sharing the burden, and most of our benefits have also increased because the people or the factors that have contributed to these benefits have also been more and have come from wide, more sources than otherwise would have been the case. So the benefits are there, they are many, and Rwanda, as to use what President Uhuru said earlier, has been much better off with being in the East African community in the last 7 years. We have seen the benefits that we would have had by working on our own as we have been working before have been multiplied many times.
I think the next question goes to President Kenyatta. This one is from Dennis Carrera, Managing Director of Kigali Heights and Vice Chair of the East African Business Council, Rwanda chapter. If we're truly positioning East Africa for prosperity in 2020 and beyond, we have to look at the pillars that get us there. And one of them is having a strong and vibrant trade center at the EABC headquarters. Now, His Excellency President Kagame made the first step in the direction, and recently his government donated a key plot of land worth close to $1.3 million, and that will house the EABC headquarters and East Africa's trade center, for that matter. His question to you, Your Excellency, is what are you pledging to do for this project? And Your Excellency, while you're ready for hard questions, he goes further and says that once this pledge has been made, as indeed will be expected, will this also set the stage for other EAC heads of state to also make their contributions? And how can the two of you help to push this agenda?
Well, my friend, let me start by saying that, you know, I wasn't expecting this to be a pledging conference. So I wasn't quite ready for that. But speaking on the principle, it's a principle that I completely support, that we need to be able to, if truly we are to deepen our trade and increase our trade, we need to do everything that we can to facilitate our traders. And I think the example that he has just used of the offer by Rwanda to donate that piece of land is something that should be encouraged. And from a point of view of principle, definitely we would be very eager and keen to support. Just, for example, as we are keen to support us having, you know, a joint exchange for the region, which again is an initiative that we launched here in Kigali a few months ago. Just as we are keen to doing our infrastructure projects, which we are doing and doing together to facilitate trade, you know, across the region, our rail, our energy projects. So With regard to the center, yes, I would come see me later.
Okay. I think there's a question here from Patrick Wainaina, but I think His Excellency also mentioned something about it as pertains to dumping in Kenya. But at this moment, I'd like to open up the floor to all the captains of industry. I think we can take probably 3 or 4 questions. If you've got a burning issue, kindly just stand up, tell us which organization you represent, and address your question.
To what extent do you see this as a challenge to our economy in the growth aspect and also security? And are we as a region putting efforts together to address this concern, President Kenyatta?
I think the first point that we need to recognize, and I think this has been the position that we have taken, not as just East Africa, but as Africa as a whole, is the recognition that this is not an African problem. This is a global problem that requires global effort. And indeed, it is a global challenge that, unless effectively addressed, it can end up severely, and is already in many ways, damaging our growth prospects, having to be withdrawn again as a result of this. But we are effectively, as East Africa, trying to see how we can come with a common East African strategy as well as an Africa-wide strategy. Our ministers of health met in mid-September, again trying to see how we can deal with it. As we sit here, they are currently meeting in Arusha, again deliberating on the same issue to see how we can get a common front to this. We are working through the African Union also to see how we can collaborate to help deal with and assist our brothers and sisters, especially in Guinea and Ivory Coast and Liberia, to see how we can be supportive. We have, for example, as Kenya, already have about 15 experts who have volunteered, and we're just 15 experts and about 40 already, which we see growing to about 100 health workers who have volunteered to participate and to go across to West Africa and support. We're just working out the modalities of how that can happen, because we recognize that as much as we will do everything that we can and work together and develop our own strategies to contain the virus from spreading or coming into East Africa, we must also be proactive. And like I said, given the fact that it's a global problem, all of us participate together to see how we can help those deeply affected countries deal with this crisis. It is something that we cannot brush away. Like I'm saying, already, as much as the virus has not touched East Africa, but its effects in terms of reduced tourism flows, in terms of, like I'm saying, flight cancellations and conferences that were planned with people who don't really know and can't distinguish between one country and another. We're all Africa, so you can't really distinguish. So it's already had an impact, and I think that there is need for us as East Africa. As I said, we're already working on that currently. As I said, we have had the meeting in Nairobi. We have the one that's ongoing now to develop common strategies to keep that virus at bay from the East African region. But we must also be more proactive, like I said, given the fact that it is an African problem, a global problem, to see how we can help our brothers and sisters also contain the virus in their own countries, and to see how we eliminate this, because otherwise it can indeed deeply affect our growth prospects going forward.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Just I'll follow up a question before I go back to Mitch on to President Kagame, really on the issue of terrorism, extremism, and the risk that we see. And Rwanda has been participating for many years in sending out peacekeeping missions and troops to the international community. But how do you rate, President Kagame, EAC's commitment as a team to combat terrorism, particularly Al-Shabaab and extremism?
Yeah, all these, whether the area talked about tragedy in West Africa of Ebola, which global and which we hope will be contained, so on and so forth, it all reminds us how interdependent and how interconnected the world is. One thing happens in West Africa, in one country, and then spreads across the continent, and it's soon a global problem. So in a way, you can see how really the whole world is connected, and therefore it requires a concerted response, working together, and so on and so forth. In the same way, with any kind of insecurity or terrorism, as we have seen it in the recent days, it's really, there are many things we may refuse to learn lessons from, many things that happen to us every day, but anyway, they will keep happening. The better for us if we can work together and build on lessons learned. When you look at the global situation, you would think the whole world is really in chaos. It's the Middle East, it's North Africa, you look at Libya and other places, you go to Mali, you have the Central African Republic, you have Al-Shabaab in Somalia and the East African region, so to speak, in a way, the effects are there. Anywhere you go to Asia, you find places, things happening, you go to whichever part of the world. Now, but every time maybe we have to think of starting what we are doing right from home and then expanding to participate in what happens elsewhere that affects us. But like we have intended and always wanted to work together as East Africans, whether in business or on other matters that really touch issues of development and prosperity of our countries and our people, there is a need to work together on some of the things that affect us, whether it is Ebola, but this time we're talking, you asked me about terrorism. Insecurity in Kenya will necessarily affect neighbors or East Africans, no question about it. Whether, if it starts in Somalia, then Ethiopia is affected, Kenya, Tanzania, Rwanda, Burundi, Uganda, South Sudan, and so on. So in the recent days, we've been working together, the defense and security forces of our region have been discussing how do we bring together our resources and work together and also build the capacity for intervention where that intervention may be called for or may be useful, but we have to build that capacity. So we have put together, and we are in the process of putting together a force, for example, that can intervene. And this is not only in the region of East Africa, it is being thought about and built even at a continental level, but again, let me for the moment confine myself to the East African region. So there is a need for intelligence to be shared, and therefore the institutions responsible for that work together to make sure they have the right intelligence. Then the armed forces working together in the future for interventions where they are necessary within the region, the police and so on and so forth. Sharing, working together. Already we are thinking about that, and we are building that capacity. And as the need increases and as the effort to integrate more and deepen our integration happens, so are we thinking about these other specific areas or sectors where we need to build the capacities to deal with any challenges that will be developing or have developed already, or that will develop of different kinds in the near future and beyond. So that one, you can't think about development, you can't think about trade, you can't think about integration, and you are not thinking about dealing with the very challenges that may actually bring down what we are building. And that comes in the security area with terrorism and so on and so forth. So we look forward to working together in many aspects. So that the problem in Rwanda is not left to Rwanda alone, because the sources or the implications go beyond Rwanda. And you can't leave it to Kenya to take it on alone and say, oh, that is happening in Kenya, let's leave it to the Kenyans. Well, they are at the front line, but in a moment, before I realize, it has started affecting others. And maybe the sources of that have not originated from Kenya. Maybe they're outside of Kenya. So that's why working together is very important.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. Maybe the last one or two questions, Dr. Mish, from the floor.
Let me take one from the floor, and then I think I've got one or two good ones here.
Thank you very much. My name is Betty Maina. I work for the Kenya Association of Manufacturers in Kenya. And I think first thing I'd like to say is that we're really grateful to be here, and thanks for the hospitality from Rwanda and the presence of our two presidents. I think on behalf of the entire business community, I'd like to say thank you very much for your leadership, especially in the recent conclusion of the economic partnership agreements. We know you are both monitoring it, and the exporters from East Africa are particularly grateful for your leadership. One of my question is mostly about when we sit in forums with yourselves, such as this, it is really very exciting, but it would be useful to understand how you translate your vision and aspiration to the public service that works and that we interact with. We've been talking a lot about integration in East Africa, but I'm sure when you meet in your summit in a few weeks' time, you will receive the report about a lot of the barriers and challenges to the decisions that you have made. And those non-tariff barriers that affect businesses a lot, whether it's a movement of persons, it's very challenging for us to understand what to do about it, because the decisions have been made by the leaders, and you will make more. But somehow, it doesn't get translated at the border. And we asked a few years ago, I think in one of the summit meetings, and the minister answered and said, actually, we have decided as ministers, but the people at the border don't know. So what do you think, how can we work with you to improve the knowledge by the public servants who are implementing your vision to better align it? Thank you very much.
Who are you asking?
You can go ahead, President. Yeah.
I think, first and foremost, I want to agree with you that one of the biggest challenges that exists is translating vision, decisions into action. And I think that is why if you looked at when we started a meeting, we said that it is very critical for us to do everything that we can to translate that vision and those decisions to practical actions. And one of the things that we decided to do was to ensure that at the summit level, we meet every 2 months, which in turn gives us the opportunity, as opposed to this annual meeting. We meet regularly every 2 months at a summit level to be able to review some of the decisions that we have taken. That in turn puts pressures on ministers. That in turn puts pressures on the technical teams. And I think maybe what we need to be able to do is, as you're saying, hopefully at the upcoming summit, we will now be able to get that clear report. We will be able to give certain direction, and we will be able to meet again and review. And we've been very, very consistent, in our meetings. And I think that has resulted in us being able to make a lot of progress on areas that had stalled before. We now have the single visa.
It's a question which comes from Haman Kasekende from Standard Chartered Bank. And also in line with this, Mr. Stevenson Mugisha from Rwanda Focus Media. Theirs is about financing of businesses and actually the East African payment system. How can we help to popularize, and what can the EAC do to ensure that the East African payment system is used as an integration tool? And another challenge also is access to capital because of the high interest rates. What can the chairperson of the EAC do to help manage these high interest rates?
Well, first of all, there is a need for, one, the understanding when it comes to the payment system that is required. First of all, it is very beneficial. It speeds up payments as they should be. But then you want that to reach as many people as possible. One, there has been investments for that to keep spreading and people having more access to it. But you also need to mobilize. We need to mobilize our people to understand that this is going to serve them better for their businesses and make it easy and shorten the times involved and instead of lining up as usually is the case at different other centers. So I think really businesses, public institutions can help jointly to make more people understand this and also invest so that using the payment systems is made easy, is accessible, is affordable, and it leads to actually more transactions taking place more easily than ever before. The interest rates.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
With regard to interest rates, I think this is a challenge that we do accept, the high level of interest rates. And I think, talking specifically Kenya, we are trying to see how we can tackle this problem, because one of the issues that is commonly cited is a lot of the administrative bottlenecks that exist that increase the cost of money. And these are issues that we are actively trying to deal with, to remove a lot of those administrative bottlenecks in terms of when it comes to land transfers and etc. for securities and all that. So that's one area that definitely we're working on. I think the other part is deepening our own capital markets so that there are alternative sources of funding available, not just necessarily also always looking at banks as the only single source of borrowing. And I think thirdly, of course, is a recognition that as governments also, when we are in the market too heavily, we tend to crowd out the private sector, and that in itself contributes to increased costs. And we in Kenya are also now beginning to look at diversifying so that we can reduce the pressure on domestic borrowing by reaching out to such, our sovereign bonds. We've had a very successful, for example, Eurobond. We're looking at the Sukuk bond, so that we also ease the pressure in terms of domestic borrowing, which all can help sort of drive interest rates to a much more competitive level for private sector.
Thank you very much. Your Excellencies, I've been informed that we only got time for 2 more questions. So what I've done is that I've abrogated. We've had, I think, 3 or 4 individuals. We have the Managing Director of ESCOM, Nokwanda Ngeni. I think there's a gentleman called Dr. Njenga from Strathmore and Eric Kabera. The key issue here is that the latest research from the Inter-University Council of East Africa indicates that graduates from universities across the region, actually 50% of them usually come out and they're incompetent on the market. Key issue here is about what can we do in a particular way to build capacity. Is there some way that we can improve the standards of our tertiary institutions so that we can churn out high quality individuals who can be beneficial to the East African community?
Well, I think that is true. I think we have experienced that. We are aware of that. And a simple way to address it is, you see, initially we, at least I say from our side of things, maybe it happens in other places as well. Much as we had wanted to invest not only in access and you know, the quantity, how many people have access to education, which we have done very successfully. We have also wanted that education to be of quality, so that at the end of the day, the people you have running through that are of a certain quality indeed that is required on the market. But we have found that quantity has moved far ahead of quality. So we are trying to adjust, to make the adjustments, to make sure that the quality is also raised. This is a real fact. It is also true. So maybe we have to keep finding ways of making that happen faster than it is happening. So the quantity side, I think we are doing very well. The quality side, we have to increase the pace and therefore investments in that area. So I think that's the only way we can do it.
Well, I'd like to thank everybody who got involved in the conversation. Unfortunately, I cannot read all the questions. The last question, I think, was asked by 3 or 4 individuals. I think George, the National Director of World Vision and the Chairman of the Finance Bank of Rwanda, and Saul Butera from Bloomberg. The question here is about the standard gauge railway to Uganda and Rwanda. Why is it taking so long to build? And can the party states think of ways of financing the project? Is there any way that private businesses can get involved?
Well, I think it is taking so long because we started too late. So I think many years were wasted. But recently we are trying to do our best to speed up this. And first of all, as East Africans, and we've been particularly focused on the Northern Corridor infrastructure area as part of the wider integration, working with Kenya, Uganda, and ourselves, Rwanda, and others who may find it necessary to, you know, be part of that project. The door remains open, and I think on the level of mobilization for funding, financing that railway, I think a decent job has been done. The 3 countries mainly, including South Sudan. We have already had conversations with the potential sources of finance to a great magnitude, meaning the size of financing that they have promised. We are talking, the Chinese have coming. We are talking with the Africa Development Bank. Other institutions have been interested. I think we are making headways. Even some actually engineering companies that are involved in railways are already engaged. We have different partners, even from United States, that are also helping out in this. So I think the urgency for having the standard gauge railway is shared at the same level. Leaders of these countries of East Africa and the very people who raised the question, they should remain assured that there is a sense of urgency shared for this to happen as soon as possible.
Thank you very much, Your Excellencies. Joshua, I hand over to you.
Thank you. Thank you. We're trying now to bring to a close the panel discussions. Perhaps request the heads of states to kind of make their summary comments. But let me just have the last question to President Uhuru Kenyatta, depending on energy. I think in terms of competitiveness, Your Excellency, I'm aware that you're launching a bigger project this week, a big contribution to our national grid in terms of power. Power is a major challenge for our large industrialists in the region. It's a race for competitiveness. And just want you to paint a picture about what is your bigger vision for 2020 and beyond in terms of energy for our region. Is there an effort for us to work together in EAC for joint power projects? President Kenyatta.
You will not have growth without energy. The two go hand in hand. And I think as a region, and as you've said, as Kenya, we have acknowledged that we need to be able to expand our energy capacity in order to be able to achieve the kind of growth rates that we expect in 2020 and beyond. And we are making big investments there. One, we are solidly have come up with a very clear position that our energy requirements can no longer just be met through government investment. And this is one area that we have opened the doors completely wide to the private sector and saying that we are encouraging private sector investment in the energy sector. As a region, we are working together to see how we can improve connectivity between Kenya, Uganda and Rwanda, Tanzania, including South Sudan, partnering with Ethiopia to see how we can maximize our available energy and potential future energy sources and make it available, across the region at an affordable price. This is one thing that is absolutely key. This is one single area where, like I'm saying, as far as Kenya is concerned, we see great potential for private sector involvement. We are just waiting to see, for example, some of the new gas finds that have been made. Once we establish reasonable quantities, our first priority, and we have said clearly, is not the export of that gas, but the use of that gas for powering power in Kenya, which would go a long way towards helping us reduce cost. The project, for example, that we hope to launch tomorrow, and the one that will follow through soon after, adding another 140 megawatts to the grid of much cheaper and much greener energy. I strongly believe that tomorrow we'll be in a very strong position to make some wonderful announcement that in terms of power, reduction in power cost totally to Kenyan industry and to Kenyan consumers. So I think in closing, all I'd like to say is that this is one area where I think there is great potential for both growth and potential investment from the private sector in an area that I would encourage them to continue looking at.
Let me say it is not just to the Kenyan investors. We are working to make sure you can tap into that as well.
Thank you very much, President Uhuru Kenyatta. I will also request that President Kagame give some closing comments. I think we've had an excellent conversation today about the partnership. It doesn't happen all the time. And we as troops and captains of industry, our role is to support the vision that you've set, and therefore Lisa, industry captain, will come later to give a vote of thanks. But let me hand over to President Kagame to give his closing remarks before Lisa comes in to give a vote of thanks. President, please.
Well, thank you. Let me simply say this. The fact that we still have a lot of challenges ahead of us, and we really need to confront them as we should. This should not blind all of us to the fact of the progress that has also been made, not only in Rwanda, but mainly and even more importantly in the whole of East African community. So we've made good progress. There are still many challenges ahead, and we are not yet where we want to be, and we want to be there as fast as possible, and through collaboration, not only among the East African partner states, but also between the states, the public sectors and the private sectors. There is a need to strengthen those partnerships, and I think it's a question of how we direct our resources, the right policies we put in place, and we should be able really to make even more and faster progress in the years ahead. So, and I wanted to thank everyone for their participation and contribution, and look forward to better times ahead.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency.